A number of thank yous that I have to say at the beginning. The first is to Guido Kleinberger, who actually contacted me about coming here to Wollishofen a year and 4 months ago, like many months before there was a war in Israel, which is hard for any of us, I think, to remember that there was once a time before a war in Israel. And I'm really especially appreciative of this opportunity because it is rare that I have the opportunity to speak abroad in the presence of my wife, Michal. So Guido said, and we're sending you 2 tickets. So I was really very, very, very happy about that. And it's really a rare opportunity for me to share my Torah in public in her presence. And as Rabbi Akiva said about his learning and his wife, Sheli v'shelachem shelahi. And so I'm very grateful to all of you for making this possible to visit in these circumstances. This is actually not my first time here in this minyan. I visited here 28 years ago.
Wow.
Yes. It was on the occasion, Marcel noted in his extended biography of me, that I taught for about 12 years at Nishmat in Yerushalayim. It's a well-known midrasha for women. And I had a student from this community. And when she got married, Aviva Shnur. Oh, I see that the name still resonates. That makes me very happy because she was really, it was the first time I'd never met anybody from Switzerland, and got to know them in a really serious way. And I saw how refined she was and what a sharp mind and such a fine person. And she passed away a few years ago. And so I want our learning tonight and over this Shabbat to be in her memory. And it really warms my heart to see that when I mentioned her name, that her name still resonates here with many of you. And she is a product of this community. And it's really to your credit that I got to know someone as fine as she was. Guido asked me, as part of our plans for this weekend, that I should give a shiur that's somehow related to Chodesh Elul and the Yamim Noraim Habayim Aleinu L'Tova. And at first blush, the choice of a story of the story of Achan from Sefer Yehoshua is not an immediate. I don't think anyone has ever heard a shiur during Chodesh Elul about the story of Achan before. It is one of my favorite stories in the entire Tanakh. It is a story that I hope I will be able to bring you into how sophisticated the story is and how it's crafted, but also because I believe that this story has a lesson for us that is particularly appropriate for Chodesh Elul, and is a lesson that often slips by us, that we don't even think to be on our radar of the things that we need to be thinking about during this month. So what I would like to do is as follows. I've made a little kind of a handout. It has the Hebrew, and I found the Zurich Bible online, so you have it here in the Swiss German. And then I have a few other Mekorot. This is what we're going to do. We are first going to read through the story a first time. And every few psukim or so, I'm going to stop and ask a question about what's going on, question for us to think about. And we're going to ask a question and another question and another question until we have a big bundle of questions. And then we're going to elegantly put out a thesis that answers all the questions all at once, and then we will come away with the lesson, I think, for all of us here. So what I'm going to do, I am going to be reading from the text in the Hebrew. And those of you that can handle the Hebrew, you have it here. And those that for whom that's a bit of a challenge, then you have the translation from the Zurich Bible on the other side. Okay? Okay. So let's just all remember where we're up. It might have been some time since we last studied Sefer Yehoshua, maybe in grade school for many of us. So at this point in Sefer Yehoshua, Bnei Yisrael have now crossed into Eretz Yisrael, and they have already conquered Yericho. And you will recall that in the story of the conquest of Yericho, that not only did the walls come down, but also that Yehoshua had told Bnei Yisrael, just before the walls came down, that when Bnei Yisrael go into the city and take out the booty, that they are to make a separation, that all the things that are gold and silver are to be put aside for the Mishkan, what's called the Cherem. Okay? And that's what they did. And then that story ends, and now we're ready to move on to the next story. That's where we open with our narrative here in Yehoshua, Perek Zayin. Okay, so the chapter begins, Vayima'alu b'nei Yisrael ma'al b'cherem. I'm in Pasuk Aleph. Vayikach Achan ben Karmi ben Zavdi ben Zerach lematei Yehuda min hacherem. Vayicharaf Hashem b'vnei Yisrael. And already here in the first Pasuk, we have maybe the biggest question. It's the title, really, of tonight's talk, as you see it at the top. On the one hand, who is it that does an Averah here? Achan, it says, Vayikach Achan ben Karmi ben Zavdi. One person took from the cherem. And nonetheless, the Navi seems to blame all of Am Yisrael. Vayima'alu b'nei Yisrael ma'al b'cherem. And the pasuk ends, Vayichar af Hashem b'vnei Yisrael. All of Am Yisrael seems to be the subject of Hashem's wrath and his anger. And why should that be if only one person did this Averah? Okay? Now, I'd like to share, this is not an original question with me, the Mefarshim, the commentaries on this pasuk, were also bothered by this. And I'd like to look, it's on the end of the last page of the handout. At the bottom I have some Hebrew. I'd like to look at two opinions to try to grapple with this problem. How can it be that one person does an Averah and Hashem is angry at everybody? So let's start with the Malbim, on Pasuk Aleph. The Malbim says, Modia ki kol Yisrael kishurim ki guf echad. All of Bnei Yisrael are like one corporate body. We're like a human body, one body. Ad shekol ish ve'isha mehem yachusu el haklal ki yichus ever echad min hagviya el hagviya. Every person is connected to one another, says the Malbim, just like in our body, each limb is connected. All limbs are connected to one another. Ukmo shal yedei choli o hefsed ever echad yitaveh choli o mum b'guf kulo. Just as when a person is ill in one of their major organs in their body, then the whole body becomes ill. So too, says the Malbim, when one Jew, when Achan takes from the cherem, nechshav ki'ilu ma'al ha'am kulo. One person takes, well, it's all one body, and it's as if everybody took. Now, this is a very difficult idea, because where have we ever heard of such a thing? Anywhere else, in the Tanakh, or even in Chazal, where one person does an Averah, and it's the responsibility of all of Klal Yisrael. Maybe some of us have heard the line, Kol Yisrael arivin ze lezeh. We are all responsible for one another. That is a line, that is true, but we need to understand the context in which Chazal said that line of Kol Yisrael arivin ze lezeh. All of Bnei Yisrael are responsible for one another. That is, you have to add one word to that to get it to the original phrasing of that phrase. The original says, Kol Yisrael arivim ze lezeh. All of Bnei Yisrael are responsible for one another. B'mitzvot. B'mitzvot. What does that mean? That means, for example, okay, if someone already heard Kiddush on Shabbat, okay, so they've been Yotzei Yedei Chovah, they have fulfilled their obligation of Kiddush on Shabbat, and they meet someone else who has not yet heard Kiddush. In that situation, if I have already made Kiddush, and I see someone else who hasn't, I can make Kiddush for them, even though I have already made Kiddush. Why? Because Kol Yisrael arivim ze lezeh. We are all responsible to help one another perform mitzvot. It is said with regard to helping others carry out their responsibilities to the Ribono Shel Olam and Kiyum mitzvot. It is never said, oh, if one person does an Averah, everybody is able to be punished. We never found such a thing. Not only do we never find such an idea, but it is not practical. Could it possibly be that if all of Am Yisrael are tzaddikim gmurim, but there's one person somewhere who maybe didn't get a good education, and they're eating a ham sandwich on Yom Kippur, then all of us are going to be punished for that? How could that possibly be? And so it's very nice to speak about how we're all connected to one another, but that we all have this degree of accountability for the actions of a single person who actually did his deed in secret, as we will see. This was not known to the public that Achan had taken from the cherem. So the Malbim is very difficult to understand, how this is a satisfactory way of dealing with this.
Malbim is even more difficult. I mean, if you have a broken arm, the rest of the body could be totally fine.
Okay, all right, there's some things, right? Okay, yeah. Let's look at the second opinion that we have here. Mitzudat David. Why is it that one person does an avirah, but everybody is implicated? He says, Al shelo shamru ze et ze. They didn't watch over one over the other. Because they didn't watch one over the other, then this is why they're all blamed. But this also is difficult. What does that mean they didn't watch one over the other? I assume that when Yehoshua said, we're going to put aside all the gold and silver from Yericho as cherem, that it'll be set aside for the Mishkan, presumably there were shomrim, there were guards that were put up, they had a watch and all that. So maybe those guards people should have watched one another. But to say everybody knew who Achan even was, we're talking about 2 million people. How could they possibly have all watched over one another? And so also the Mitzudat David seems difficult to understand. And so we are left with this opening question, which is the question, how is it that one person does an avirah and Hashem is angry at everybody? Okay. I'll add also, in this one pasuk, that there's another question. It's more of a textual question. Look how Achan's name is listed. In pasuk Aleph. Vayikach Achan ben Karmi, ben Zavdi, ben Zerach, lemate Yehuda. Like 5 generations of who this person is, when most of these names that are mentioned here are mentioned nowhere else in Tanakh. Normally, someone will be introduced as Ploni ben Almoni, lemate Yehuda, lemate Shimon, the person and his father's name and the Shevet that they were part of. Why is Achan's name listed 4 generations back? So I'm adding questions. We're not answering the questions yet. We're just raising the questions as we go through. Okay.
But Zerach is known.
Zerach a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe.
More than a bit.
Well, Zerach was born. That's what we know about him. That's mentioned earlier on. You don't know a story about Zerach.
There were twins.
They were twins. As I said, he was born. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Just a quick comment about the Malbim. The way I understand it is not that this is the reason for why Hashem was punished everybody. He says Modiati. So it's basically from here we learn that Kol Israel, so basically all of us are connected, and if one gets sick, then it kind of spreads. So I just understand the Malbim differently, not trying to explain why Hashem is angry to everybody, but what is the problem that, or what is our learning from this?
But if Achan takes, how will that have influence on anybody else?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a disease, right? So he does something wrong, and this is something that might spread. So this is our learning.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to come back to that idea in a slightly different way a little bit later. Okay? Okay. Now we move on in the story. The Navi now turns to a totally different topic. Because what Achan did, he did in private. Nobody knew about this except for Achan and the Ribono Shel Olam. But Yehoshua knows nothing about this. Yehoshua, having now finished with Yericho, Yehoshua now sets his sights on the next military target, and that's where the story goes to next. Pasuk Bet. Vayishlach Yehoshua anashim miyericho ha'ai, asher im Beit Aven mikedem lebeit El. Yericho, of course, as we all know, is down in the valley. And militarily, Yehoshua needs to achieve a victory at the top of the mountains, right? So that he always has the advantage of being high up against, and then from there he can go down and conquer other nations, other cities. So Ha'ai is all the way up from Yericho at the very top of the mountain range. Okay, so he sends out these spies, in the middle of Pasuk Bet, Vayamar Alehem Limor, he gives them their charge, Alu ve'raglu et ha'aretz, Vayalu ha'anashim, ve'raglu et ha'ai. Pasuk Gimel, the spies come back, Vayashuvu Yehoshua, Vayamu elav, Al ya'al kol ha'am, Ke'alpayim ish, or Ke'shloshet alafim ish, Ya'alu ve'yaku et ha'ai, Al ki yada shama et kol ha'am, Ki me'at hema. Okay. Pasuk Dalet, what happens now after that report? Vaya'alu ha'am shama ki shloshet alafim ish, vayanusu Lifnei Anshe Ha'ai. I'd like to focus here, my next question here is about this verse, Pasuk Dalet. What happened in this battle? Yehoshua does what his spies told him to do. He sends 3,000 people, and it sounds like as soon as they get there, Vayalu min ha'am shama ki 3,000 ish, vayanusu lifnei Anshe Ha'ai. As soon as they got there, they ran away.
They were scared.
Well, but that doesn't even say that there was a battle. It doesn't say they started to fight. Some of the soldiers fell. Then you can understand their morale breaking. It doesn't even sound like they even saw the fighters from that they got to Ai, and then they just ran away. What is this? What was going on? Why? Okay. Pasuk Hey. Vayaku mehem anshe ha'ai ki 36 ish. Now, of course, the Bnei Yisrael run, so the Anshe Ha'ai come running out after them because they see that they have, they've broken the spirit of Bnei Yisrael, still for reasons that are not clear to us. And 36 people are killed. Vayerdefum lifnei hasha'ar ad hashevarim amin pasukei vayakum ba'morad vayimas levav ha'am vayi l'mayim. Okay, Pasuk Vav. Vayikra Yehoshua simlotav. Yehoshua doesn't know what's going on. Yehoshua had been promised in Perek Aleph. Hashem had said to him explicitly that there wouldn't be any losses. Hashem said to him in Perek Aleph of Sefer Yehoshua, Kol makom asher tidroch kachar lechem bo lechem v'dativ. Anywhere you step, anywhere you tread, you will be victorious. So Yehoshua is beside himself. As Pasuk Vav, Vayikra Yehoshua simlotav, Vayipol al parnav arza lifnei aron Hashem ad ha'erev, hu v'ziknei Yisrael, Vayalu afar al rosham. Pasuk Zayin, Yehoshua says to Hashem, Vayomer Yehoshua, Aha, Hashem Elokim, Lama he'avarta ha'avir et ha'am hazeh et ha'yarden, לתת אותנו ביד האמורי, להעבידנו, ולו הועלנו ונשב בעבר הירדן, בידוני. מה אומר אחרי אשר הפך ישראל עורף לפני אויביו? פסוק ט' וישמעו הכנעני וכל יושבי הארץ ונסבו עלינו והחריטו את שמנו מן הארץ. מה תעשה לשמך הגדול? And I think that we can only sympathize with Yehoshua. What's he going to do? He doesn't understand what's going on. Hashem hasn't kept his promise. How is he going to lead the people? What is he going to explain to the people? Poor Yehoshua. Pasuk Yud, Hashem's response to Yehoshua. Vayomer Hashem Yehoshua, Kulach, lama zeh אתה נופל על פניך? Hashem speaks to Yehoshua almost like a child. Get up off the ground. What is this? Like we would speak to a 2-year-old, when they have a tantrum and they go splat on the ground, and the parent goes, get up. What's all this crying about? I'll give you something to cry about. Hashem should be sympathetic with Yehoshua. What does Yehoshua know? Yehoshua didn't know Achan. Yehoshua didn't know what Achan did. What Achan did seems to have nothing to do with Yehoshua. And Hashem is very impatient with Yehoshua. Kulach, lama zeh אתה נופל על פניך? Then Hashem says, Pasuk Yud Aleph, now he explains to Yehoshua, Chata Yisrael, not Chata Achan, Chata Yisrael, וגם עברו את בריתי אשר ציוויתי אותם, וגם לקחו מן החרם, לשון רבים, they all took from the חרם, וגם גנבו, וגם כיחשו, they all deny it, וגם שמו בכליהם, they're all stuffing their pockets. It's like almost satire what Hashem is doing. What does this mean? This is the same question that we had from Pasuk Aleph. Why is all of Bnei Yisrael blamed for what one person did? Hashem continues, Pasuk Yud-Bet. ולא יכלו בני ישראל לקום לפני אויביהם, עורף יפנו לפני אויביהם, כי היו לחרם, להוסיף להיות עמכם, אם לא תשמידו החרם מקרבכם. Pasuk Yud Gimel, Hashem gives a suggestion or instructions of what to do now to solve the crisis. Hashem says, Kum kadesh et ha'am, ve'amarta hitkadeshu lemachar, כי כה אמר השם אלוקי ישראל, חרם בקרבך ישראל, לא תוכל לקום לפני אויביך, עד הסירכם החרם מקרבכם. We have to get the gold and silver back. Once we do that, then we can move forward. How do we do that? Hashem says as follows. V'nikravtem baboker l'shivtechem. Pasuk Yud. V'haya hashevet asher yilkedenu Hashem יקרב למשפחות. והמשפחה אשר ילכדנה השם תקרב לבתים. והבית אשר ילכדנו השם יקרב לגברים. פסוק ט"ו, והיה הנלכד בחרם יישרף באש, אותו ואת כל אשר לו, כי עבר את ברית השם וכי עשה נבלה בישראל. So we have here a process of winnowing down. Right? We're going to somehow take all of Am Yisrael, and we're going to identify the Shevet, and then we're going to take the Shevet and identify the clan, and then within the clan, the family, and then finally the individual. Now, it's interesting, why bother with this? Why not just tell Yehoshua straight out, Yehoshua, Achan ben Carmi, ben Zavdi, ben Zerach, ben Matei Yehuda, you took from the Cherem, go and catch him, and it's not what we do. Why is there this whole process here? But I want to say more about this process. Okay? Why this process I find not only extraneous, but very bothersome. It's morally problematic. Let me explain why. So, what was the process here? The Radak explains, what is this v'nikrav, you shall be brought, v'nilkad, you shall be snared. The Radak explains that the process was done as follows. Yehoshua gathered all of the tribes around the Aron HaBrit. And in order to identify which tribe had, which Shevet had the perpetrator, the guilty party, the way that Hashem is telling Yehoshua to do this, says the Radak, is that the Nisi'im, the chiefs of each tribe, lined up in front of the Aron HaBrit. And that what Yehoshua would do is that he would invite each Nasi, one at a time, to walk across in front of the Aron HaBrit. If the Nasi of a given Shevet was able to walk freely, unimpeded, across in front of the Aron HaBrit, then his Shevet was chaf mipesha, was innocent, and then they would know that in that Shevet, that's not where the perpetrator was. But if the Nasi of a given Shevet were to walk and nilkad, and suddenly he wouldn't be able to move, that was the sign that the perpetrator of the crime was in that Shevet. That's how he said this was done. Okay? Now I want to do a little bit of an experiment here. Okay? Let us say, friends, that everyone who is over here, you are Shevet Reuven. Okay? Good. And you, in this section here, you are Shevet Shimon. Okay? And you are Shevet Yehuda. Okay, good. Let's see what happens. So we line up the 12 Nesi'im, okay? And let's say Yehoshua says, B'vakasha, Nesi Shevet Reuven. Please, walk in front of the Aron, okay? And the Nasi Shevet Reuven takes a deep breath, because what's the feeling? What's everybody feeling in Am Yisrael? Everybody's nervous. Everybody. Because I know I didn't do it, but maybe my brother did it, maybe my son did it, maybe my cousin did it. So everybody is on shmilkes, as they say. Yes? Okay? So now, Yehoshua says, Nasi Shevet Reuven, please. Nasi Shevet Reuven does a little tefillah, and he walks across, no problem. What are you feeling here? Shevet Reuven, what are you feeling? Ooh, relief. Very good. Shevet Shimon, Shevet Yehuda, what are you feeling?
Anxious.
A little bit, right? The walls are a little bit closing in, just a little bit more, okay? Then we take Nasi Shevet Shimon, okay? And he walks across, no problem. Now, how are you feeling? Very good. And how are you feeling? It's a little more. Do you see how the laundry bills will be very high? Everyone is schwitzing an awful lot. More and more. And then Yehoshua says, Nasi Shevet Yehuda. Walk across. And Nasi Shevet Yehuda starts to walk, and Nilkad, he gets stuck. Okay? What are you feeling in Shevet Yehuda? And what are you feeling in Shevet Yehuda? Shimon, huh? Oh, maybe happy, that's right. I won't ask, okay? Because, oh, thank God. No, it's shock, but better it should be him than me. Right? Okay. Okay, so you can see here how all of Am Yisrael is like shaking, right? Until we finally get down to Shevet Yehuda, and then within Shevet Yehuda, they do the same thing again. They take all the heads of the clans, right? And they pass them across, until finally, they identified that it was Achan ben Carmi. We're going to see that in a second. But along the way, think about how many people here were totally petrified by what was going on, right? Every Shevet until they got to Yehuda. Everyone within Shevet Yehuda until they got down to the right clan. Everyone within that clan until they got down to the right family. Everyone within that family until they got to Achan himself. Yes, eventually all the people that had nothing to do with it went home and everything was okay. But the whole day they're pulling their hair out. Why does Hashem subject all of Am Yisrael to different degrees to such torture, emotional torture? What a crazy way to do things. Let's just read. This is actually what happens. We'll start here. Pasuk Tet Zayin. Vayashkem Yehoshua b'boker, vayakrev et Yisrael yishvatav, vayilached Shevet Yehuda. Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayakrev et Mishpachat Yehuda, vayilkod et Mishpachat Azarchim. Vayakrev et Mishpachat Azarchim lagvarim, vayilached Zavdi, vayakrev et Beito lagvarim, Vayilached Achan ben Carmi ben Zavdi ben Zerach b'Mateh Yehuda. Okay.
This explains the first pasuk.
Well, yes, it seems to have something to do with that, right? You can see, I asked earlier about Pasuk Aleph, why is Achan's name Achan ben Carmi ben Zavdi ben Zerach b'Mateh Yehuda? It seems to have something to do with this choice. I'll get back to that later. That's a good observation. Yes. Okay, we're just going to read a few more psukim here. So now we have the perpetrator. It's Achan ben Carmi. Pasuk Yutet. Vayomer Yehoshua el Achan b'ni simna chavod Hashem Elokei Yisrael v'ten lo todah. We want a confession. V'haged na'li me'asita al techached mimeni. Pasuk Chaf. Vaya'an Achan et Yehoshua vayomar Omna anochi chatati l'Hashem Elokei Yisrael v'chazot asiti. He gave a very detailed confession of what he had done. And this is what he said. Pasuk Chaf Aleph, and we'll have a question here too. He says, Va'erev hashalal aderet shin'ar achat tova u'matayim shekalim kesef u'leshon zahav echad 50 shekalim mishkalo ve'echmedem ואקחם, והינם תמונים בארץ בתוך האוהלים והכסף תחתיה. And I want to finish by asking a question here on Pasuk Aleph. Let's look carefully at the list of items that Achan stole. He stole 3 items. 2 of the items that he stole are things that Ganavim have always liked to steal. Kesef and Zahav. To this day, you can't go wrong with a Ganav if you offer him Kesef and Zahav. But the first thing that Achan mentions on his list in Pasuk Aleph, he says, Va'erev hashalal, I saw there, aderet shin'ar achat tova. Literally, a Babylonian cloak or coat. Maybe it was a fur coat. What is this coat? Okay. I'd like to look on the last page at what Rashi says. It's a midrash. Okay. And the Midrash is even more bizarre than the Pasuk itself. Okay? Rashi says, what is this Babylonian cloak? Aderet Shinar. He says, Tirgumo Itztila Bavli. It's a Babylonian cloak. What is this? He says, Shekol melech shelo kana lo palterin be'eretz Yisrael lo nitkara da'ato b'malchuto. He says that in ancient times, everyone knew that Eretz Yisrael was a chosen land. And so every king in the region only really felt that his kingship was worthy, was of consideration, if the king himself had some type of holding within Eretz Yisrael. It's kind of like today about who owns Yerushalayim. Well, everybody owns Yerushalayim, right? We do, the Jordanians do, the Pope does, the Russians do, the Palestinians do. Everybody wants to feel like they have an ownership specifically over Har HaBayit, okay? By doing that, they gain cachet, right? Oh, we are the owners, we are the protectors. So Rashi says it was the same thing b'mei kedem. Every king in the region, in order to feel that he was a significant king, he had to have a holding in Eretz Yisrael. Says Rashi, V'haya lemelech Bavel, the last line in the Rashi, V'haya lemelech Bavel, palterim b'Yericho. Melech Bavel, it turned out that he had like a summer castle or a summer palace in Yericho. Uchshe'abalikan, when he would visit Yericho, lavashotam, he would wear this coat. And so when Achan says, I saw in the shalal, I saw in the booty, a Babylonian coat, this is what Rashi understands this coat to be. What is this Rashi trying to tell us? That's my final question. And so, let's summarize the questions that we asked. We asked to begin with the biggest and most important question. How can it be that one person does an Averah and all of Am Yisrael is implicated? Why is it that Achan's name is given with 4 or 5 generations previously, characters mostly who do not know about anything else, other than they were born elsewhere in Tanakh? We had the question about the battle at Ha'ai, that Yehoshua sent the number of people that the Meraglim had told him to send, 3,000 people. It sounds like as soon as they got there, they just ran away, and it's not clear why. And then we saw that Yehoshua was freaked out, as well he should be, and he prayed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was impatient with him, even though he certainly had no way of knowing what Achan had done. And then we had this solution that Hashem has, how to identify the perpetrator, which puts all of Am Yisrael to varying degrees under enormous emotional duress. All of Am Yisrael. And then finally we have here Achan's confession with this bizarre item, this Babylonian cloak, which Rashi says was the cloak that the king of Bavel would put on when he would visit Yericho. So I want to answer all of these questions with one fell swoop and one elegant thesis. Okay? To get at this, I'd like to return to a part of the story that we kind of skipped over or read through pretty quickly. And that is the report of the spies, the Meraglim, when they came back from Ha'ai. Okay, this is in Pasuk Gimel. Okay? What I'd like to do here, I'd like to read Pasuk Gimel again. Okay? I am deliberately going to read it in a monotone. No feeling, no intonation. And I'd like you to tell me, in the words that they say, what do you hear? What tone of voice do you hear? Again, I'm going to read it monotone, which I don't think is how they said it. I want to hear how you understand. What tone of voice are they using here? Okay, Pasuk Gimel. Vayashuvu al Yehoshua, vayamu elav, al ya'al kol ha'am, ke'alpayim ish, o keshloshet alafim ish, ya'alu v'yaku et ha'ai, al tiyaga shama et kol ha'am, ki me'at hema. What do you hear in this pasuk?
It's so insignificant
I hear
that
confidence. What do you hear?
the tone is so insignificant that it's not worth to worry about.
Okay, not worth. Okay, that yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that we're gonna, no problem, we'll just take them.
A cakewalk,
Yeah.
as we say in English.
Yeah.
Okay, this is gonna be simple. Okay, you said confident,
Bordering on arrogance.
arrogant. Okay, right. Confidence can still be good. Arrogance is never good. Okay, but this is arrogant. This is arrogant. How do you see what here signals to you that they're sounding arrogant?
2 or 3,000. Doesn't matter.
Okay, 2 or 3,000. Yeah. Don't bother the people. What are you going to call up everybody?
Yeah,
don't bother the
everyone.
people. Okay. Good. I'll tell you that the diction that they have here, ke'alpayim ish o kishloshet alafim ish. Send 2 or 3,000. You never have speech like this in the Tanakh. This is kind of very colloquial. This is our type of speech. Oh, you can do this, you can do that. You can pay this, you can pay that. And I think it's because I almost see the spies coming in here, and they come to Yehoshua, pardon me, they put their feet up on the table. You know what? Even we recognize that's like too arrogant. So we'll raise it by 50%. 3,000 people. Okay? That's the effect here. Do you notice, now we have a question here, are they being confident or are they being arrogant? No, I can think of a good svara why they should be confident. Why is it appropriate to be confident that there will be victory here?
Because God promised.
Okay, they captured Yericho, right?
And they were told that they were going to
And right?
be successful. Yeah.
What is missing from what they say?
They have them.
They don't mention Hashem. If they had said, listen, Yehoshua, Hashem who did Kriyat Yamsu for us, who brought down the walls of Yericho, for Hashem, nothing is too big, certainly not high. They don't mention Hashem at all. So then where's their confidence from? So I think what's going on here, we all know that the walls came tumbling down in Yericho. And I think that for Bnei Israel, what happened here was that they were focused on their own victory. Okay? I want to look back. I have here some psukim from Yehoshua Perek Vav. I'd like us to look at really just what happened exactly at Yericho. It's not just what they taught us in kindergarten, the walls came down. Yes, the walls came down, but there's a little bit more than that. When we look at how that unfolded, we see the following. We see that in Yehoshua Perek Vav, the story of the fall of Yericho, that Hashem had given instructions. What exactly should happen? In Pasuk Hey, in Yehoshua Perek Vav, Hashem had said, "Vayav imshoch bekeren hayovel, keshomachem et kol hashofar, yariu chol ha'am tiru'a gdola, v'nafla chomat ha'ir tachdeha, ve'alu ha'am ish negdo." When the walls come down, you should go and fight man to man. That part we don't normally remember. It's important. And it's repeated when it actually happens. In Pasuk Chaf, "Vayara ha'am vayitku b'shofarot, v'yishmoa ha'am et kol hashofar, v'yariu ha'am tiru'a gdola, v'tipol ha'choma tachteha, v'ya'al ha'am ha'ira ish negdo, v'yilkedu et ha'ir." The walls came down and they fought man to man. Hashem wanted both things to happen. You will blow the shofar and the walls will come down. That's one. And then two, you will fight man to man. It's part of the instructions and it's part of what happens. Why were both of these important? This is Am Yisrael's first battle in Eretz Yisrael. It's their first time really ever fighting. And so Hashem says there's two parts to a victory for Bnei Yisrael. There has to be a recognition that ultimately everything is from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And so when you blow the shofar, the walls will come down. But not everything is only on a Kadosh Baruch Hu. There is also your own hishtadlut, your own efforts. You also have to begin to learn how to fight. And so when the walls come down, then obviously the people of Yericho will be totally panicked. You have to go and fight because you're going to have to learn to fight for yourself. And then you will have that first experience because it will be a victory. Hashem wanted both parts of those things. It's only when those are in balance, recognizing Hashem's role, but also doing our own ishtadlut, that we get to the right balance. What seems to me to happen here, when we come to our story of the Meraglim, and they come and 2,000, 2,000 ish, 3,000 ish. Al tiyaga Hashem et kol ha'am, you don't have to call up everybody. No mention of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It seems to me that what's happened here is that the people, the spies, have become drunk with their own success on the battlefield. Remember,
Have the wrong conception.
Yeah. Yes, this is the first conception. Yes, Marcel. Yes, exactly. We're going to see that soon. What we have here is that Am Yisrael had never fought before. They had been slaves for hundreds of years. And now they're tasting power for the first time. And it's so sweet and so intoxicating that all they seem to remember from Yericho, Kochi v'otzim yadi, our victory, our might. We went in, we were fighters. That's what they seem to remember. One second. And so what we see here is, at least amongst the spies, that there seems to have been a misunderstanding of what Yericho was really all about. And a kind of intoxication with their own power. And that is what led to the victory. But now, friends, I will tell you that it isn't just the spies. else do we see in the story that seems to have been infected with this spiritual virus? Achan. Yes, Achan. Why Achan? I agree. How do we see that in Achan?
Takes the cloak of the king.
Well, we'll get to that. But before we get to the cloak of the king, what else did he take?
Gold.
But the gold and silver was for Hashem, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'll show you how we know that Achan doesn't fully understand that idea well. If you look in Pasuk Chaf Aleph, okay, the last Pasuk that we read in the story of Perek Zayin, he says, Va'ereh bashalal, in the booty. Notice, those things have been identified as cherem. He doesn't say, I saw in the cherem. Cherem means consecrated for Hashem. Shalal is the general word for war spoils, booty, which in the time of the Tanakh, that was by law belonged to the soldiers. It's not like today, Tzahal can't take things from Gaza and bring them home. But back then, throughout the Tanakh, this is what you find, that it is accepted that when soldiers go to war, the booty they take home, that's their pay for what they did. And so when Achan says, I saw in the shalal, the words that he uses demonstrates that he didn't regard those things as forbidden. No, this is mine. So I took it. And so now what we see is that we have a kind of a spiritual virus in Israel about how to interpret Yericho. The spies got it wrong, right? Their arrogance. Achan got it wrong.
But he said, Chatati Lashem.
Yes, of course. Once he was identified, but he is recreating his averah. He says he's giving his frame of mind as it was back then. Okay.
He says "Va'ech medem." That means that he knew that it was not authorized to do.
Perhaps, or that it overcame him. So we see that the spies have this virus. We see that Achan has this virus. Who else perhaps has this virus?
Yehoshua.
Why Yehoshua?
Because he doesn't stop them.
Well,
He doesn't take responsibility to say he can't.
No,
do
he
that
accepted
because God is
the
not
report
leading.
of the Meraglim.
okay. Achan, right, so we can implicate Yehoshua in two places. Maybe Yehoshua should have realized that if Am Yisrael lost, well, where there's smoke, there's fire, so something must have gone wrong. But what Marcel says, I think, is more to the point. Yehoshua heard the Meraglim. He heard their arrogance, just like we all did. Yehoshua should have said, fellows, I don't like the way you're talking. Yes, we are going to win. But to do a zilzul like this, to do just, 2,000 people, don't call up everybody, it's going to be simple, and you don't even mention Hashem, I don't like the way you're talking.
They do give an explanation. Kima'at him. They give a strategy.
Yeah.
We dare not many. Why
Yeah.
should we overload? We have
Yeah.
still a lot to do. Here, it doesn't make sense. I
agree.
understand this is already a human being's
Yeah.
thought and not the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way.
Yeah.
But they do have an idea why.
Yeah, they give an explanation, but we would still expect something spiritual. Okay? Who else seems to be affected by this virus?
I got another basic question.
Wait, no, just one second, Renee.
The 3,000 people.
The 3,000 people, yes, good. Why do you see that?
So they don't even try to.
Oh, yes. We came to, let's look at the battle again in Pasuk Dalet, and we can see it here as well. What happened in the battle? So we have here, it says, Vayalu mina am shama kishloshet alafim ish. The 3,000 people went out to battle. Vayanusu lifnei anshe ha'ai, and they ran away. And we said, what happened? So now how do you understand what happened?
They didn't have bitachon b'Hashem, but it would work. So the moment maybe somebody tried something,
Okay,
they just run away.
when they fought Yericho, as they approached Yericho, suddenly walls came down. And of course the people of Yericho were, totally flipped out by that. They come to the entrance of Ha'ai, the walls don't come down. And now suddenly they realize they're really going to have to fight. So they weren't ready for battle, for real battle. And so they just run away. And they're chased. And they all get, and many of them perish. So we can see here that there is a spiritual virus throughout so many parts of Am Yisrael. The spies have it. Achan has it. The troops had it. Even Yehoshua, maybe he had it. Now the question is, I'll get back to your question, Renee, in a second. So we've answered here many things. Let's see. One more thing that we need to understand now is that Rashi that I said. What was that Babylonian cloak? What was Rashi saying? Rashi says the first thing that Achan puts on his list is a Babylonian cloak. What is that coat? This is the coat that Melech Bavel, who owned part of Eretz Yisrael, when he would come to Yericho, he would put on the coat. Achan walks into the booty. Before he gets to the silver, before he gets to the gold, he says, the coat! And he puts the coat on. Why? What does that represent? What is Achan thinking?
He wanted to be like the king of
Yes!
Babylon. Yeah.
This Yericho it belonged once upon a time to Melech Bavel, and now it belongs to me. I am the rightful owner. And so he puts on this coat, I'm sure it didn't fit, and he goes, it's a perfect fit. Okay? What Rashi is saying, the purpose of this midrash, it's a midrash, it's not the pshat, but like so many midrashim, it throws a magnifying glass on what's happening in the pshat. To say, yes, Achan thought of himself as Melech Yericho because he conquered it. And so it fits in with what we're saying. Okay? So really, the last question that we're left to answer here, we understand now a little bit of why Hashem is angry at all of Am Yisrael, because it's not really that one person did an Aveirah. Really, all of Am Yisrael have a hand in this Aveirah. Or I'll put it differently. Achan did what everybody was thinking. Yericho is ours. We won. He went a little further. But they created an environment of thought, of thinking about Yericho, that he took to the next step by putting out his hand. And so we understand why Hashem is angry at Am Yisrael, even though only one person did the Aveirah. But an Aveirah comes from somewhere. There's a social environment that creates what we each do. We understand now why Hashem is angry at Yehoshua. Yehoshua heard the Meraglim speaking this way and didn't do anything about it. We understand why Achan begins his confession with the Babylonian cloak, as we explained. We have one thing left to explain, and that is this process of winnowing down. We said that Yehoshua lined up all the Nisim, and he passed them by one at a time, and all of Am Yisrael were all schwitzing. Who's going to be? Who is it? Okay, so in the end, everybody went home except for Achan, but they all schwitzed. That's not fair. So I think we can say the following. We have a spiritual virus within all of Am Yisrael, but not everybody is equally guilty. Let me explain. The main lesson here is that we do things, and we think that we're operating out of our own free will. I choose to do a little better. Sometimes I choose to do a little less better, but it's me that's choosing. And what this story is telling us is that really we're very social beings. We are constantly getting cues as to what is permitted and what is prohibited from all of those around us. But who is around us? Those that are around us are in concentric circles. What do I mean by that? Achan is a product. But who is he a product of? Well, he's a product of Am Yisrael. Yes. But even more than he's a product of Am Yisrael, he's a product of his Shevet Yehudah. And even more than he's a product of Shevet Yehudah, he is a product of the particular clan of Zavdi, and within that, the family, and within that, his own nuclear family. If you'll notice, the emotional ringer that people are put through is all dependent on how close they are to Achan. It's what I call the pyramid of responsibility for what happened. At the top, who is ultimately the most responsible for what happened? Achan. He gets punished, but he's not the only one. All of Am Yisrael participated in this. But even more responsible for creating this person, Achan, with his attitude, more than Am Yisrael, which is the outer circle, the base of the pyramid, is Shevet Yehudah. And so when all the other Shvatim are sent home, Shevet Yehudah are all still schwitzing. Who is it? Who did it? Which of our brothers, which of our cousins did it? And then they send home all the other clans, and then there's only the clan that he's from, and they schwitz even more, and then his family schwitzes the most, and then they're all sent home also. But everyone is subjected to din, to being judged by how close they are to Achan, because the closer they are to Achan, the more they had influence on him to create him and his Aveirah. And I think the message, friends, and with this will end, is really pertinent for us. So we all begin to engage in a cheshbon nefesh during these days of Elul. And I think our cheshbon nefesh, we think about what's going on in our lives, what are we doing good, what are we not doing good, vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, vis-a-vis our family, vis-a-vis our community. But we always think of it in terms of what am I choosing to do and what am I choosing not to do. There's more to it than that. There's who is influencing me? Who am I influencing? Achan did not act by himself. Achan was created by a spiritual virus within Am Yisrael as a whole. And so much of our actions, friends, happen in a social environment, for good or not for good. When we contribute to the community, when you take a position of leadership here, not only are you contributing to the community, you are sending out a message. This is what is good behavior. And everyone around you is seeing you. And they are being inspired to follow your lead by taking a leadership position here. And you have an incredible impact, far beyond what you'll ever know. They won't tell you. They won't tell you, but they see you. They see you. And conversely, when we leave Minyan early, or get to Minyan late, or don't come to Minyan, then everyone's noticing. What is expected around here? Do we come late? Do we leave early? I'll tell you, I know of a Minyan, friends. It's the most incredible Minyan on the face of the earth. No one has ever arrived at this Minyan late, and no one has ever left early. Have you ever seen Jews like that? Minyan, no one has ever arrived late, and no one has ever left early. Yes, it exists. I'll tell you where. It exists at 7:38 every morning when the train pulls out of Beit Shemesh on its way to Tel Aviv. And there's a minyan on the train, and no one comes late. And no one arrives early. But what we do in this regard, we think I'm just doing my own thing. Everyone's watching. And everyone's watching and being influenced in a good way, and maybe sometimes not in such a good way. And so this is the part of the cheshbon nefesh that we need to do. We need to take a good look at ourselves. And that's not just me vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but everyone around me is watching. For good, or not for so good. I think when we begin to be cognizant of that, then we can say, am I doing what I'm doing only because those around me don't do any better? Or do I know that really I should be doing better? Do we understand the power when we do things that we're supposed to be doing? Just how strong and powerful those are? Of all the people who are not going to tell me anything, but they're watching, and they're being inspired, and they're being raised up. And I know when I come back to a community like this after 28 years, and I can see, a community like this doesn't exist just by passivity. Everyone has to pitch in to make it happen. It's not so huge here. And everybody that pitches in really makes a huge, huge Kiddush Hashem and a huge influence on everybody around us. And so I salute you for the vitality this community has managed to perpetuate over so many years. And I heard that there are many young people, and I think that's really just amazing. That itself is a testament. That people see here a vitality, and it's a kol kavod. And I think that all of this is stuff that we can all think about as part of our cheshbon nefesh. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with you. Oh, yes, Renee, yes, your question. I'm sorry, thank you. Yes, please, questions. Yes.
My question is, why did Yehoshua send Meraglim in the first place? Why did Yehoshua send Meraglim in the first place?
Yeah.
Some of it really reminds me of a story of the Meraglim in the
Maybe
Torah.
he didn't need to. Maybe that was a problem.
He was used to do that before.
Before
going to Yericho.
No, but he knew the result. He knew the disastrous result of the Meraglim.
Yeah, but in Yericho it succeeded.
Yeah, though at Yericho, Hashem had appeared to Yehoshua with the Sar Tzva Hashem before him, telling him that he was going to beat Yericho. Hashem didn't come to Yehoshua before the battle with the eyes. Maybe that was the difference. I just want to say that I think that the approach that I've given here tonight, maybe after all, this is what the Mitzudat David was saying. Let's just look back at the Mitzudat David on the. You wanted to say that this is in the Malvi, but I think that's in the Mitzudat David. When the Mitzudat David says, why is everybody considered blameworthy? Al shalosh shamru zeh et zeh. So when I first explained it at the beginning of the Shiur, I said, How many guards people were there that even knew that Achan went in? But maybe Shalosh Shamru Zeh said they didn't guard one another, wasn't physically watching who goes in and who goes out. They weren't guarding one another about how people were talking. People were saying, wow, that was amazing. Look at all those selfies we took in Jericho over the dead soldiers, you know. We were such great fighters. That's where they were Lo Shamru Zeh Zeh. They didn't watch over one another. In terms of their thought, in terms of their conception of things. Yes, yes.
Just an observation. It seems there's a linguistic
Please.
support as well
Yes.
for this double-sided influential
Yes, yes.
two-way. We've got the people who were crossing the sea and whatever.
Yes.
The word vayirkad.
The word what?
The word
Vayirkad.
Vayirkad.
Vayirkad. Yes, yes, yes.
Vayirkad. But then the one in Yehoshua, the kaf, vayirkadu et ha'ir. So one is a conquering in a positive from Bnei Israel, and one is that they were paralyzed or whatever it was that they said.
Hem Ya'alu.
At the end of Kaf, Yehoshua, Vav, Pasuk Kaf, vayirkadu et ha'ir, when they actually conquered Jericho, it was a positive.
Very
But when
nice.
they're and the same thing with Cherem
Yes,
as well.
very
Because when
nice.
we think of Cherem, we think of something
Wow.
terrible.
Yeah.
But
That's
actually,
great.
Cherem is used
That's
here as
great.
something
Yeah, that's great.
positive
That's
and something
Yeah.
great.
great.
You were supposed to capture one spirit instead. You're being careful. I love that. Thank you. I will add that in the future.
So
to
there's
my
a
share.
spirit there, linguistics.
Yes, excellent. Very good. Thank you.
Your explanation would be perfect if Shevet Yehuda passed the last. But if he passed the fourth, then many people had the occasion to be.
No, that's not so because well, first of all, we don't know the order. But let's assume that it was birth order. Okay, until Yehuda comes along, everyone that's there is still schnitzing to some degree.
But if he passed the last, then anyone had the occasion.
That's true. Then
Like
more.
the story
That's true.
with
That's true.
Binyamin.
Yeah.
The Binyamin comes the last, and he is.
Yeah. Okay. Here. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, and